I'm sorry.
I'm Steph.
Okay, and you went up your back. Sure.
What?
Okay, that's fine. And then tab just has wrong names.
Our team's name is Dave, something like that.
DEIA.
A,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Good.
Closing government, who's with this? And closing opposition, who's speaking this?
Nancy.
Okay, welcome everyone to the second round. Are there any questions on the standing orders before we start? Great, I'd like to call upon the first speaker to open the case for the government.
Would you like me to close the door?
No, yeah, probably a good idea. Wait, 2 seconds.
It doesn't close, so we're
Oh,
I
okay.
tried.
Oh, that's cool.
I
Okay,
tried.
whenever you're ready. I guess I can leave the tool.
Okay, yeah. Is someone keeping time?
Yeah, I'll keep time.
Perfect.
You should hopefully also keep your
My phone is
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
yeah, that would be good. Sorry. Can you hear me
I
okay?
can hear you, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please, we're here tonight to debate on that this House welcomes the rise of art that celebrates a lack of economic wealth. Please, before moving on to my main points, let me define this motion for you. First of all, just to make some terms clear, what we mean is that this House would actually welcome and support and not ban any form of art, which by art we mean actually any form of expression, freedom of expression. It can be architecture, it could be painting, songs. We could have protests as public displays. These are the type of things that we support. These are examples of what this House would support and welcome from the creators. What we mean by by celebrating, they're going to be showing, exposing, maybe criticizing, to make known the issue of a lack of economic wealth. And I think pretty much lack of economic wealth is pretty self-explanatory. So this is what we're debating here tonight. This is what the motion is defined as. So moving on to my main points and why we need to celebrate this any form of art that actually celebrates lack of economic wealth. Well, first of all, you cannot actually do anything that you don't know. And, nothing can be done if you are not informed. People and the government, every part of a country, they need to be informed. How informed? Well, through this expression of art, you can have it in various different forms, as I mentioned. Why do we need this? We need people. We need to listen to people. People need to voice their concerns, their disappointment. Whatever they need to explore. They need to show how they're feeling. We need to listen to that. We need to work on that. And that way we can actually have economic growth. That way we can fix our problems, maybe work on them. We need to, and the first step towards that is actually supporting and not banning art. And why specifically art? Well, anyone can relate to art. You don't have to be, let's say, a mathematician to understand a specific complicated problem. Well, but art, on the other hand, anyone can relate to it. Anyone can understand it. It's very relatable and it's very relevant right now. And there is no such thing as that. Oh, I don't understand that, or you're wrong, or I'm right. No, art is very diverse. It's very easy for people. What backgrounds they have, it's very easy for people to understand and relate to. And how could that help? How is voicing your concern through art or public displays or having all these things, how can this actually help the country? Well, this, in a way, this was definitely going to make it, it's going to have a huge platform. It's going to have it's going to speak to major issues that are taking place. It's going to actually make it to a political platform. And in that way, people can actually do something about it. The government can do something about it. And that way you have the necessary knowledge, and you have an idea of how people are feeling, of how these creators of such express the major concerns. Yes, please.
Art is interpreted different for everybody. How are you going to monitor the unintended consequences of this?
Well, I cannot. What do you mean by unintended consequences? Because art, it is true that it is actually interpreted differently, but in a way, there is a basis to everything. It can be interpreted differently, related to differently, but nonetheless, you'll still have an expression, a simple understanding of what the artist wants to say, and it actually says more about the audience and the one who's interpreting it, rather than the creator itself. And through these consequences that the audience are going to express in that way, the government and the people are going to actually have like the concerns or the ideas explained more. That actually it's through the audience, not just the art, but the art is the basis for that. That's why we need to support it, so that the people can interpret it and through their actions or consequences after seeing that art. In that way, everyone can be informed of specific problems that are going on. And my second point is, how is that going to help not just the artist or the audience or every single person? It has a psychological benefit for that. That way people can express the way they're feeling, that they will not suppress something that they're feeling, and that, because we've seen how that actually can have negative consequences if you keep on like oppressing someone or suppressing their ideas. Or we've seen how it is in Middle Eastern countries and Arabic countries, where the regime was like, no to this, no to that, and banning everything. That actually just brings on negative impact. Well, through art, people are going to be more expressive. It's healthy for them to actually express how they feel. It's psychologically effective, and we need healthy citizens for this world to actually work and to grow more. So for all these reasons, this House would propose this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the third speaker for the opposition.
Okay. Honorable delegates, dear Judge, thank you for the floor. I will start with introducing two of my arguments, and the first argument is about human value of justice, while the second argument will be about the human value of freedom. Before that, I will refer to the speech of the first delegate of the government, who defined today's motion, and we do not agree with the definition in a way that it was said that we should not, this House should not ban the art that celebrates lack of wealth. We are definitely not against banning anything. We just believe that this House should not support, should not provide incentives, should not support this art, because it is just an excuse, it is just an illusion that will actually divert public and people from what is the real problem. So it does not make sense to us that we put in the money to the art that will celebrate the lack of wealth, and we do not put that money in some social welfare programs or some programs that will industrialize our country better and that will improve the economy. We also we want to refer to the aspect of the economic growth that the first delegate proposed, where we do not find it very clearly analyzed of how this art will actually increase the GDP of the country, purchasing power of its citizens, and how the whole economical situation will be better. Thank you. I will take it later. Also, we would refer to the talk about the audience that will actually understand the art and that it will be criticism. We do believe that people do not need to be informed that they lack economic wealth. They live that economic lack of wealth. They actually, it's their daily routine, and they know that they are actually missing something. So they do not need to be informed. We also do not find it reasonable enough that this art will actually criticize the government, that it will criticize the rich people, and this idea that we should all be rich, but we should instead support art that will actually criticize inequalities, and this will help the citizens. It will help them just to forget about their situation. The situation needs to be improved and not to be forgotten. I will start with my arguments. The first argument is about justice. We do believe that this motion, and if we support this motion, it will not actually solve the real problems that we have. Inequalities will still remain, and this is just an illusion that will just divert public. I will take it later. So the problem here is the structure of the society that is very unequal, that is unequal, and it will not change anything in the society. So we do not see enough benefit in this today's motion. It will. We here have to understand that art, that economic wealth is not only about human desires. It's not only about human desires, but it's about human needs. So no matter how much art you create, how much art you support, it will not solve the basic human needs. So the needs are not solved. We are not talking about desires, about the needs. And the second argument that I is the freedom. We do believe that this does not allow enough of economic and social freedom, where we see that this art is actually a philosopher, Charles Taylor. He introduced an argument criticizing this way of thinking about freedom as if you have a pain in your arm, then you cannot just cut your arm and your pain will disappear. So you do not need just to give away of something. You do not necessarily have to give away from the wealth just to feel better. What you actually should do is that you improve your situation, that you work harder, and that kind of art should be supported. Something that will substantially help people and not divert them from their real life problems. You had some points. I will take them now.
Would you give us some examples of this art?
Of the art that
The economic wealth, like art.
we should support art that will present us that inequalities that we have in today's world are not something that we desire. Art that will tell us that we should work together to move forward, to make inequalities disappear. And that is the art that we actually want. In this sense, today I will be very proud to oppose the motion and to oppose the decision where House will welcome the rise of art that celebrates a lack of economic wealth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the second speaker for the government.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to start off my speech by first rebutting some of the points my opposition brought up, and then rebuilding the case that my partner brought up earlier. So, and going with the definition, as we stated earlier, the definition of art is, we're not just limiting to architecture or paintings. We're talking about public displays. We're talking about freedom of expression, which is important to remember for the rest of this debate. And moving on to celebrating, we're talking about exposing, criticizing, or making known inequalities or the lack of economic wealth. So as my partner brought up, or as our opponents brought up in their last speech, they talk about how art does not necessarily make any difference because it doesn't necessarily increase the GDP of the citizens. However, what we are trying to talk about in our speech is that this art or this expression is needed to make known inequalities in the first place. So you guys talk about how you should support art that encourages us to move forward, encouraging citizens to make a difference and to make a positive impact. What we have to realize is that in order for us to move forward or make any difference, people need to realize that inequalities exist in the first place. So what this art is doing, no thank you, what this art is doing is it's actually making known inequalities. So you say that people do not need to be informed of their lack of economic wealth. My argument against that is that not everyone is living at the same economic status. There's people who are living with wealth, there are people who are living in poverty, and the problem is this may not be well known across all different strata of society. So if you're living in wealth, you may not understand that there are people living in economic poverty, and this type of art, which surpasses just paintings, songs, in the traditional thought of art, but could include protests and public displays, no thank you, is actually making known that there is economic inequality. And this is important because in order to make any changes, in order to move forward, in order to support art that is supporting moving forward, you have to recognize in the first place that an economic inequality exists. So what this is doing is it's allowing all strata of society, no matter what socioeconomic status you may be from, to recognize that there is an inequality, which essentially goes into your first argument that the human value of justice and then your second, the human value of freedom. Justice and freedom are based upon freedom of speech, first of all, and understanding the differences that might exist in society, no thank you, and understanding inequalities in society before you can actually make any difference. So moving on to talk about why this is important. When you have an inequality, in order to make a difference, you need to understand the inequality. So we're talking not just that this art is going to directly improve the GDP of a country, we're talking that through art, including protests, including making known economic inequalities, you are actually these concerns to a political stage where you're able to make a difference through the political process. So that's where real change about, and that's where we're able to have these conversations, is by first making known these problems and then elevating them onto a stage where people can actually sit down and have a discussion about what is the problem. Moreover, when we talk about this house welcoming the rise of art that celebrates lack of economic wealth, you guys mentioned that you're not against banning, but you're saying that or provide incentives. My argument against that is that by welcoming, we're not just providing incentives or support, but also just allowing those things to happen in the first place. So allowing protests, allowing art that might show a lack of economic wealth, yes.
If we say that we do not believe in banning it, doesn't it necessarily also mean that we allow it? We do allow it, but we do not want to economically support it by giving incentives for some other projects that can actually help you.
I don't think you necessarily need to economically support it, though. By welcoming, we see welcoming as essentially as allowing them, like protests to take place, or allowing art to be made that celebrates this lack of economic wealth. So, moving forward onto our own case, it's important to have art that shows a lack of economic wealth for a couple of main reasons. As I stated before, without knowing that there's disparity, you can't do anything about it. And by allowing and welcoming, giving people a forum to discuss this lack of economic wealth, you are allowing for changes to be made on a political basis. And as my partner brought up in her earlier speech, there's so many different types of art and freedom of and forms of expression that it's able to reach a very far audience as well. So it is for all these reasons that we welcome the rise of art that celebrates the lack of economic wealth.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the second speaker for the opposition.
Thank you. First of all, the proposition says that we are talking about equality, but the rise of art that celebrates a lack of economic wealth really creates discrimination between people, because it does not eliminate poverty, and on the other hand, it creates two different levels of people, those that are poor and we show them that they are poor and that they are not in the same status and in the same level as more wealthy people, and people knowledge that they are wealthy. Moving forward, supporting supporting the rise of that kind of art doesn't really solve any kind of problem. We said, first of all, that it also creates discrimination, and it also does not solve the problem because it does not help people that are poorer to rise to a more advanced social level and a social status. No, thank you. Also, it does not encourage poor people to gain what could be theirs, but forces them to accept their social status and no, thank you, and doesn't give them the chance to feel that they can move to more advanced social status. It is also an excuse for not helping poor people to exercise their right to education and to have the chance to have a more decent life than the life that they already have. I think that people are already well informed about the fact that there is an economic crisis in the world and that there are people in the world that live than less than $1 a day. That art that that reminds them of that won't help, will make them feel less acceptable in the social community. Also, it is not efficient if anyone has the means to make that has to do with the lack of economic wealth, because people can, as stated before, people can interpret art differently, and it might even insult people that are as wealthy as others and are really, really affected by the economic crisis. If this house really supports the rise of art that celebrates lack of economic wealth, like stating that this house this house won't help poor people to develop in their lives and have the chance to education, to education and to a decent life. Any questions?
The thing is that we need to motivate people to participate in the market they can, but what if the market is the problem?
Yes, but how the market is the problem? How this kind of art will solve that problem? Also, poor people do not want to see art that shows how their lives are structured, everyday life is, and that they are not as wealthy as others, but they want to see real and solid solutions and changes in order to eliminate poverty and in order to make their lives better and more prosperous. To sum up, we're against this motion, and in addition to that, we would propose more solid solutions in order to eliminate poverty and in order to give the chance to people that do not have the proper education, the proper way of living, to structure the life in a better and more prosperous way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'll go for the third speaker for the government.
Can I grab some water, please?
Yes.
Okay. Just a second.
Okay, let's call on the third speaker for the government.
Hooray!
Okay. What I'm going to explain to you in my speech is why capitalism is the problem. Nextly, how a lack of economic wealth solves this. And lastly, how this will motivate people to have a lack of economic wealth, and exactly what we mean by a lack of economic wealth. So, how does capitalism work anyways? I think we can all agree that it's fucking us over right now pretty hard. In a charge to participate in competition and to modernize, capitalists are forced to increase their production output and lower the wages of the workers, which in turn increases the price of the product and lowers the demand because people can't afford it as well. This causes an economic crisis, but it is repaired by sucking in economic wealth and a cheap labor force from the third world. And this process can basically keep repeating itself for the next foreseeable future until we drain the third world of all its economic potential and the first world simply blows up because there is no more resources that can be used to increase output and production. And one of the main problems with this is that we don't see the direct impacts of the system that we are participating in. What they are saying is that people are aware of inequality, and that is to a degree true. People are aware that within their country, you have people who are really rich and they are getting richer, and people who are really poor and getting poorer. But what they don't see is the starving Ethiopian child, and what they don't see is the Asian worker who works for Apple, and what they don't see is what this is doing to entire continents. People are largely misinformed about the state of the world. People cannot name 3 countries in Africa. People cannot name any significant crisis which was brought on by capitalism. Nextly, why a lack of economic wealth solves this? What we mean by a lack of economic wealth is exactly that, a lack of economic wealth. You will try to earn as little as you can, and you will try to spend as little as you can so that you distance yourself from the market. Because the less capital there is circulating in the market, the less of a possibility it has to recover from a crisis, and ultimately this brings to its early and very positive collapse. Before I continue, why not right now?
So when talking about the hungry Ethiopian child, do you believe that this art that you propose will actually help the hungry Ethiopian child who will probably not even see it? And do you believe that it will actually lead to a collapse of capitalism?
Yes. I don't believe that this is the one thing that will bring about the absolute end of capitalism, but I believe that anything that motivates people to bring about the end of the capitalism is largely a good thing, and this does it. I believe that this will help the Ethiopian child by weakening capitalism. The less capital there is flowing in the world, the less maneuverability there is left for the richest people in the earth, so they can't recover from a problem that their production has caused. Read up on Marx. Sorry. Nextly, I will talk about what kind of art exactly this is. One thing that has not been mentioned by the government or the opposition is street art, which is extremely popular right now. I would like to talk about Banksy, and I would like to talk about Blue. They make art that is accessible to absolutely everybody. They paint it on the street, in the blocks where their targeted group of people lives and circulates most often. And as for it being easy to misinterpret, that is simply not true about this art. One direct message, and they may be possible art theorizers, something different, but this will not be accepted by a large bunch of people because it's simply there and it's blatant. When you see Mickey Mouse walking a decaying African child, there's not a lot of space to think. You realize the inequality of the world that you live in from the third world, and you realize what it is that is fueling it, how you participate in it. Nextly, the harm of people being insulted by it, well, we believe that this does not insult the poor at all. It glorifies the people who are poor. It insults the large capitalists, and I believe that they really should be insulted for what they are doing to the world. Nextly, they said that they want art that criticizes inequality, but this is not mutually exclusive with our case. This art largely criticizes inequality as it seeks to end it. Nextly, I will talk about how this motivates people. Firstly, it brings the problem out into the open. You see what is happening into the third world. You see a photograph that has been vectorized and painted on a wall next to you, and you realize what is happening. So by force of empathy, you will identify with those people. This is something that works for most people. Not all people will feel empathic, but most will. Nextly, it gives you a mechanism of fighting it. do not spend, do not earn, try to produce your own materials, grow your own food, sew your own clothes together, do not spend your money, and try to be self-sustaining as much as you can. Nextly, it brings about a martyrdom in the artist who paints it, because he is largely being prosecuted, and people are really fond of identifying with martyrs, as we have as examples of Islamists who blow themselves up in the Western world, but just because of the benefit of being martyrized. And we believe that art in general has a great power to move people and to shift ideologies. We have an example of Dante, who risked his life and everything to end the people's struggles in Italy in the time in which he lived. And the Divine Comedy, as something that was subversive, people were attracted to it, and they were motivated to fight the system because of it. And we believe this is the case now. So to sum up right now, why capitalism is because it causes a large portion of the world to suffer greatly, and the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer, and we don't see the direct influences of this problem, which makes it harder for people to be motivated to solve it. Why economic wealth increases the crises that capitalism goes through and makes it collapse as soon as possible, and actually how this motivates people to withdraw themselves from the capitalist system by showing them what it does, by showing them how to do it, and because they are able to identify with the artists and feel them as somebody who is working on their side. So that will be all from me.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the third speaker for the opposition.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, for top half government and between top half opposition, we saw some really good clash, which is basically exposing the lack of wealth and where the line needs to be drawn if we are actually putting these people more at risk who are living in poverty, or if it is actually going to help them. Now, we on side opposition believe that this is not going to help these people who are living in poverty. And again, to reiterate, exposing the inequalities is not enough to simply help these people that side government claims that they are helping. And then on closing government, he claimed that a complete and utter collapse of capitalism is going to be the cure-all for all of the economic problems in the world, but however, this is not going to work. If you put everybody in poverty, this is not going to solve for poverty. Just because we are all on an equal playing field where nobody can afford a slice of bread doesn't mean that we are all equal. That's not solving for inequalities, it's creating more problems than it's worth. Now I'm going to move on to my partners in my own case. Now, my first point is going to be the glamorization of poverty, and my second point is going to be the example of slum tourism, and then it's going to go on to some more rebuttal and extensions as I go on. I will try and signpost. Now, first and foremost, with the first point of the glamorization of poverty, what we need to see is we are not touching on the deeper issues here. Now, side government says that this is going to be great because you're going to be exposing the issues that people in poverty live in. However, as side government has already explained, people living in poverty know that they are in poverty. But what my partner and I want to make a point of is that glamorization of poverty is not the way to go. With this art, welcoming this art that celebrates a lack of economic wealth, it's not going to solve anything. In fact, it is just glamorizing these people because art sells. That is the main purpose of being an artist. Like, yeah, you do it for the love of it, but ultimately you need to put food on the table. Glamorizing what the next hot thing is, which would be poverty, is what's going to sell. And if you put these people into this position, you're showing off. It's not helping them. What you're doing is just creating art pieces, artworks, and songs and everything else that will sell. And with this, it doesn't paint an accurate picture of the real problem. Thinking of poverty in the wrong way is not going to help it. Thinking of poverty as an art movement rather than a real life situation is going to create issues in the economy as well as in society today. It's not helping these people. Now, this brings me to my next point, which is basically this is like the new slum tourism. Now, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with what slum tourism is or what it was meant for. Slum tourism was basically set up where rich upper class people would be able to go down to countries who are suffering in poverty in developing nations, and they would see how these people were suffering, and they would feel better about themselves because they're thinking, you know what, I came down here, I bought a couple of knickknacks, I'm doing a service to these people. That is not helping them. In fact, what you're doing is you're creating these people and turning them into a freak show. That's what you're doing with these people who are living in poverty and who are living with a lack of economic wealth. You are turning them into something that they are not. Instead of treating them as people who need help, you're treating them as something to be sold and bought and traded. That's what you're doing. You are objectifying these people. So like slum tourism, it has failed. These people who are living in these poor villages are still living in poor villages. But now the only difference is people could come in and look at how they're living instead of helping them. That is the only difference that we are seeing. Now, mocking economic wealth and objectifying the impoverished, this is not going to solve it. Again, opposition, they brought up some points with capitalism being the problem and child workers in developing nations. However, I don't know how, in America, I can bring up a point where there's a joke where you either have to guess, are they homeless or hipster? Hipster is a style that people can afford. Homeless is obviously people living in poverty who are living on the streets, who can't afford basic necessities of daily life. Now, with this, you're creating an art movement that is glamorizing the homeless look. Where are these clothing articles coming from? Clothing is an art style. The fashion industry is an art industry. That is, you seem to disagree with me. Do you have a question?
Oh, yes, yes. We are insinuating the notion that people should not die of hunger, but create their own means of production and not spend money. Not economic wealth, but actual material wealth.
All right. So, with this, I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding where you're coming from with your capitalism point. But what you need to understand is that bringing art and spending capital with this, it's not going to help or hurt whether you do or don't spend money on this. Now, what we on side opposition are claiming is that we should not welcome this rise of an art movement. It's not helping anybody. The government is claiming to help. Who's making the profit? The people who are rich and wealthy enough to be able to afford these art pieces. If you can afford a painting, if you can afford a piece of architecture, that's who is profiting here in this industry. It's not the people who desperately need it. You are turning the people who are living in poverty and people who are on the lower levels end of the economic spectrum into a sideshow, something to be mocked, something to be looked at as something other than human. That's what's going on here today. Now, it's the stigmatization of peoples, as my partner brought up in a POI. Art is interpreted in many different ways, and it means different things to different people. Now with this, it's not helping or hurting the lack of wealth. What it is some person can interpret an abstract idea as something entirely different than what the artist originally intended. And with this, there is no way to regulate it. And with a lack of regulation, you can't control the art or the people. No, thank you. So what you're instead doing is, along with the objectification of these peoples, you are also stigmatizing them in a new way. They are already poor. They already know that they are in poverty. They already know that they are starving. However, stigmatizing them in a new way and creating a different subculture for them where they aren't even a part of because they cannot afford these pieces. They are not benefiting in any certain way. This house isn't saying that we should ban art in general. That is not at all what we are claiming for. However, should we welcome something that does not hurt, that does not help people, but instead hurts them to such an extent where they no longer feel human? Absolutely. We should not welcome it at all. We should not encourage it. It is not something that should... we should not gain any benefit suffering of others. That is not what we are intending to do. That is not what we should do, and that is not the way to solve the issues that we have in today's society. So for these reasons, I would strongly urge you to be opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the final speaker for the government.
Just a moment. Okay, first of all, the thing that bothered me the most, how the hell will you buy a piece of wall? We are not talking about art as like Mona Lisa painting that is going to be sold and traded and whatever else. We are talking about art that is accessible to everyone in the city, in the world, in the country, in whatever they're going to be exhibited. So we are talking about specifically street art, where people like Banksy and other examples we gave are giving their art to everyone who is passing by. So that is quite an obvious definition of art that is going to motivate people or actually make a step towards changing something. And that is what we want to do. We do not claim that something is going to solve everything and all problems are going to be solved and everything is going to be fine. We want to make a step, at least one step, and this is one step towards it. No, thank you. We believe that first of all, what we have from the first half of the table, they were arguing about are people aware or are they not. We believe that they are aware, but they're not seeing it every day. They're not seeing it in the street. They're not seeing it on the way to work or back, or they're not seeing it on the way to school. No, thank you. We believe that is one of the maybe cruel way, but that is what we need. That shock that when someone sees the painting, when someone sees something on their way to work that is so obvious and so not possible to be misinterpreted, we believe that is what people need to be actually aware and to actually do something about it. Yes, people know that some kids are suffering in Africa, but they're not going to do anything about it. They're not going to go there and give all their money, and that's not what we accept them to do. We want them to first of all be aware, and second of all follow the idea that is behind this art. The idea of actually decreasing your wealth, becoming independent, and becoming someone who is out of the system. And when you do not participate in the system, and when you have so many people who are not participating in the system, you have a system that is collapsing. That is what we want to achieve. No, it is not going to collapse at the moment one guy steps out of it, but we are moving towards it, and we are moving towards solving the problem. So we are not using poverty to glamorize. We are using poverty to show people and situations, to show people what is going on. We want people to be aware that what is actually the problem, and why the rich people are getting richer and why poor people are getting poorer, and why no one sees those poor people who are getting even poorer. So we believe that nothing from the side of opposition. Why is this going to be? Why is this wrong, and why is wrong welcoming this? Because we believe that there is nothing wrong in welcoming something that is making at least a step towards solving a problem, and instead of not doing anything, or like we're not going to say anything, we're not banning them, but we do not support them. We do support them. We believe that supporting them is the best way to continue policy and towards solving the problem of inequality, which we achieved as a problem in this debate. But we believe that we showed this through several points. But before that,
Okay, yes. So how do you suggest that you're going to solve this? If people like Banksy also have prints going out, and how are you going to fix this? Like, how are the people benefiting from this if they aren't being treated as people?
okay, first of all, we do not believe, like we said, that automatically something solves the problem. We do not believe that when someone sees a painting, the child in Africa is going to get a bag of food. No, we're not saying that. We are creating an idea. We are creating a psychological effect on people who are seeing those pictures, and that is leading to a benefit of which we're saying that is going to help these people once the benefit is achieved, and that is not going to happen at the second that someone sees Banks's art. So we believe that reminding people of what is going on in the world is and showing them what is needed to be done, which these art artworks are doing is what we need right now, instead of not doing anything. So we show this through several points of, through several arguments. We believe that capitalism is one thing that is actually creating that problem, because we are not, the people and the kids and everyone from third world countries are suffering a massive suffering a lot, while while other people who are already rich get richer. And we explained the capitalism, how what is going on and what is happening. We believe that the increasing the idea of the lack of wealth is going to help. This is the way to show this. To show this to people. We believe that this street art is going to motivate people to actually exclude themselves from the system, and that is what we need right now. And yeah, that is a slow process, but it is a process at least. So, time. We believe that we didn't take the burden of solving everything right now, immediately. We believe that we have to take some steps. We have to, if not take, we have to take some steps, and this is one of those steps. We have to create the idea, and the idea is what is going to lead people to exclude themselves from the system, to show that they do not agree with the system and that something is terribly wrong. We do need that, and we believe that this is one of the ways we're going to do that, because we're going to show people that we do want them, and we do welcome that kind of art, and we do welcome that kind of protest to what is going on and what is actually wrong, and that something is actually wrong. So what we showed you today, that people are supposed to be really aware, not just fakely aware or just vaguely aware of the problem, and we believe we showed you why the motive to start doing things like excluding yourself from the system are going to help, and we believe that for all these reasons, this is why you should propose this motion.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call upon the final speaker for the opposition.
Today, I'm going to present to you two different worlds. One world in which this house welcomes the rise of art that celebrates a lack of economic wealth, and a world that doesn't, a government that doesn't welcome this sort of thing. So first, what we've seen from the government side is that supporting this will bring this inequality, that the fact that we have this inequality, supporting this art will bring it onto a political platform and changes will be made. This is not factual, however. Just because the art is out there doesn't mean people are going to be inspired to make changes. Just because there's graffiti on the street doesn't mean that somebody wants to institute a policy for better social welfare programs. They say that any step is better than no steps at all. We need to do something. These exist, but what I'm going to try and prove is that our side, they have more harms than they have benefits of this, that this is actually a step backwards for reducing inequalities. It's only going to accentuate and glamorize the inequalities that we currently have in our system. And they say that the idea that people will be motivated to give up what they have and capitalism will die and the collapse of the system will happen and everybody will be on an equal playing field, that Marx, everybody gets a really small piece of the same pie kind of idea. But this is not what's going to happen with this, because people don't look at art and think, I want to give up everything I have and throw it all to the wind. No, this is not what happens. Instead, we see that with art is something that people put a value to. It's something that is interpreted differently universally, as my partner brought up, that I look at art in one way, somebody else another way, and so you can't quantify what people will see this art as and what that is going to bring to the sphere, not at this time. So this doesn't solve for issues. It doesn't solve inequality. It says that, hey, these inequalities exist, and my partner and I believe that not only does it say that these inequalities exist, but it glamorizes these inequalities. My partner brought up the example of slum tourism, and you tour these areas, rich white people typically, tour these areas and they look at these people, and the idea was that they were supposed to be inspired to help these people, but instead now they get to go home and say that they saw a really poor African country and it was horrible, gave the kid on the street a piece of bread. It's not inspiring them to go beyond their reach, it's hurting these areas because there's an influx of tourists and there's an influx of people that think they care but don't really care, and this is creating a glamorization of the problem. It's cute to say that I gave a piece of bread to a kid, but it's not actually doing anything for the problem. It's hurting these areas. And when we see this street art and these political protests and this buying and selling of art that portrays a group of people, we're going to see those same impacts that we're seeing in slum tourism. We're going to see those same impacts happening to people that lack economic wealth. And this is very bad, and we believe that the steps that are brought upon in the political platform won't be brought upon because people just won't be inspired. And when we see that people can't control art, and you can't control the flow of art, and you can't quantify the inequalities in a painting. You can't quantify in graffiti what is happening to a group of people. It's not possible. My partner and I believe that it's going to hurt them. That when they see an image of a poor black child not getting food, that it's going to somehow inspire people to help, but it's just going to make that group more objectified, and we believe that this is overall a very bad thing, but first I'll take your point.
What about when you're talking about art in forms of political protest that's actually calling for a change being made?
Okay, yeah, political protests, that's great, but it causes people to be angry at the government instead of working for solutions. It's just a bunch of angry people shouting at each other. It's not creating a civilized dialogue for solutions. So that the fact that protests happen, that's not going to bring it into the political realm in a positive way. We believe that all of the impacts of this are negative. We are going to see peoples being objectified. We are going to see, and the objectification of those people is bad because it's only going to further their status. It's only going to concrete for them that they are stuck in poverty. It's going to be like the concrete brick that sinks them. Yes.
In slum tourism, you have the kids or the people who are directly benefiting from that state of affairs, and tourism is generally good for the economy of parts of the world. Secondly, the number of people who are exposed to the idea that a lack of economic wealth can help increases the people who opt for that option. People are already doing that.
The slum tourism has not been good in any way. It ruins their lands and kills their infrastructure and takes the healthy water from these areas. And anyways, back to my second point. We see that we're going to create a stigma on these people, that these poor people are poor and it's ugly, but it's also kind of beautiful in a way that I want to display on my wall, and this is not something that we can create. The hipster versus homeless, it's a very real thing. People have created a style after being poor because it's the cool thing to do. They didn't do anything about poverty. They created a style about this. So this isn't going to encourage people to make changes. It's just going to glamorize a terrible situation that doesn't need to be glamorized. It's not going to bring it onto the political platform for change. It's going to create government, and it's going to create a stigmatization of people that will ultimately be worse for the inequalities than would not then not welcoming this resolution. So that is why we on side opposition proudly oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that debate. If you wait outside, I will give you a result in the next couple minutes.